Imperial Japan wasn't the only belligerent nation of the Second World War to deploy suicide attacks. The Chinese, Soviets, and Germans did so too, but they never came close to the scale of Japanese kamikaze operations. In the final years of the Second World War, as their empire crumbled around them, Imperial Japanese commanders deployed an array of suicidal last-ditch vehicles that they hoped would cause just enough bloodshed to turn the war. We're starting with the now infamous Special Attack Force, the 1st Kamikazes. These were 24 naval aviators hand-selected by Commander Asaichi Tamai for a mission he knew would be their last, a kamikaze attack on the US fleet in the later Gulf. They were all particularly young, some weren't even 18, and were well educated. They weren't volunteers, nor were they fanatics. When Tamai asked Lieutenant Seki to lead the mission, he lowered his head in sorrow and said, "I'm not going on this mission for the Emperor or for the Empire. I'm going because I was ordered to." Seki's grim acceptance of death was expected of all kamikazes, even if they had strong personal reservations. From their writings, it's clear these men were desperately searching for the reason they were sacrificing their lives. Am I simply to die without giving meaning to my life? Why must we fight? We no longer have any purpose for fighting. Even military high command was grasping at straws. Just before the first planned kamikaze attack, Admiral Onishi gave the following speech: "Japan is in grave danger. The salvation of our country is now beyond the power of the ministers of state, the general staff, and lowly commanders like myself. It can only come from spirited young men such as you. Thus, I ask of you this sacrifice and pray for your success." On October 25, 1944, the aforementioned Seki led the first kamikaze attack. One plane in his unit succeeded in sinking the escort carrier USS St. Lo. Perhaps this proved the concept for Admiral Onishi and his colleagues. Many more suicide missions were to come. Beneath the waves, a different sort of kamikaze attack was at work. Kaiten torpedoes honed in on their targets driven by human pilots. The Kaiten was an adaptation of the remarkably successful Japanese Type 93 torpedo. Its designers had essentially cut the torpedo in half and added a pilot's compartment in the middle. They also fitted the Kaiten with steering controls and a periscope. Development was fraught with issues. One of the Type 1 Kaiten's chief designers, Lieutenant Hiroshi Kuroki, asphyxiated when the torpedo he was test piloting sank and became stuck in the mud. For running out of air, he identified the mechanical defect and scrawled a note detailing its fix. Despite not being at fault, he also apologized for sinking one of the Emperor's watercraft. The later model, the Type 2, was marginally more reliable. It could submerge in up to 100 meters of water and had a maximum range of 83 kilometers. But this was rarely seen in practice. The Kaiten was unstable at sea and difficult to launch in rough conditions. Ships and submarines had to be modified to carry it, which compromised both their speed and maneuverability with disastrous results. No less than 8 submarines carrying Kaiten into battle were sunk with all hands trying to launch them, a combined loss of 846 men. Despite a human pilot, the Kaiten was actually less successful than the standard Japanese naval torpedo and much more expensive to produce. Only 2 US ships were definitely sunk by Kaitens during the war. Torpedoes weren't the only munition that the Japanese put a pilot inside. They also put young men inside rockets. This idea came from Ensign Mitsuo Ota and a consortium of students from the University of Tokyo. Like all Japanese suicide craft, both the designers and pilots were young, too young, far younger than the average Japanese sailor or foot-slogging grunt. Ota and his colleagues designed several prototype human-guided rockets, but only the Type 11 saw service. This aircraft was towed to its target on the belly of a Mitsubishi G4 Embedi twin-engine bomber. When near enough to the target, the Oka would detach and accelerate to lightning-fast speeds by means of 3 solid fuel rockets. Speed allowed it to penetrate enemy defenses and inflict massive casualties on enemy shipping. At least, that was the theory. In reality, The Oka, which US forces dubbed Baka bombs, didn't live up to the hype. They were deployed very late in the war when the US Navy was battle-hardened and its sailors very experienced. They knew the value of anti-aircraft defense, especially when it came to kamikaze attacks. US Navy task groups expanded their highly effective defensive ring system outwards and focused on destroying the Okas before they got to the combat zone, when they were attached to the Bettys and helpless. Scores of Okas were also lost when the US submarines Archerfish and Redfish sank the Japanese carriers Shin'yō and Unryu. 74 Okas were deployed during the war, and 56 meant their ultimate end, along with their pilots, in fiery explosions. Okas sank 2 smaller ships in the sea battle off Okinawa in April 1945. They made a negligible impact on the war, but led many a bomber crew to their deaths. If planes, torpedoes, and rockets weren't enough, Imperial Japan also turned motorboats into suicide craft. These were called Shinyo. In May 1944, Shinyo boats went into mass production. They were originally intended to be made from steel, but due to shortages, were actually built with wood. They were powered by third-rate car engines and carried a 300-kilo bomb in the nose. The one-man Shinyo Class 1 displaced just 1 ton and measured 5 feet long, while the two-man variant, the Class 5, was double this. 6,000 Shinyo boats were built during the war, and 150 pilots, whose average age was just 17, were ordered to drive them. Like their compatriots piloting kamikaze planes, torpedoes, and rockets, they were mostly students recruited straight from school or university. The Imperial Japanese Army also experimented with boats of this kind, but decided against using them for suicide missions. The Navy had no such qualms. Shinyo sank 3 US landing boats off Luzon in the Philippines and another one off Okinawa. Many more attacks were launched, but these were largely unsuccessful. US forces soon developed countermeasures against suicide motorboats, and once they had, Shinyo became sitting ducks in open water. As resources dwindled and the Allies encroached on the home islands, the Imperial Japanese Navy had to find even more creative ways to sacrifice their own men. One idea they came up with was the Fukuryu program. Officials planned for 6,000 men to be equipped with specially made diving suits and trained as underwater guerrillas. These men would deploy from secret underwater foxholes and march for up to 10 hours totally submerged. They would travel underwater to a predetermined point roughly 5 meters below the surface. Here, they would lie in wait. Each man was equipped with a single weapon, a bamboo pole with a contact-triggered mine fixed to the end. He was to crouch on the seabed, then leap upwards once a US landing craft sped across the surface. After thrusting his pole into the landing craft's soft underbelly, the mine would detonate and kill the frogmen as well as the vessel's occupants. 2 battalions of these kamikaze frogmen were trained and deployed to Yokosuka Naval Base in preparation for the coming Allied invasion, but only one was fully equipped. Rubber for diving suits was scarce, and their production was further hampered by a lack of workers and suitable machinery. In the end, the Fukuryu were never sent on their suicide missions. The atomic bombing of Japan forced the government to its knees without a costly invasion. But what do you think? Why was it that military officials forced the youth to pilot their suicide attack craft? Did you know most of them weren't actually willing volunteers, or that they questioned their orders? How do you think you would cope with being ordered to undertake a suicide mission as an Oka rocket or Kaiten Torpedo pilot? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.